Hello there, welcome back to the channel. This is Nerd.World Films, and today I want to talk about a horror film that's very important to me personally, probably to very few other people, but to me important, as it has a lot of childhood nostalgia attached to it, because this was an 18 certificate, which I believe in America is NC-17 or X-rated. X-rated. It's X-rated, isn't it? That's what everyone worries so much about, and very deservedly so of that X rating. It is a body horror movie that I was given at the age of about 5, which is why I'm so desensitized to horror movies now. It was actually one of, if not the first video I was ever given, and it was actually a pirate copy of it. I've still got it actually in my attic or loft, whatever you want to call it. It's up there somewhere with all my old videos. And I think I even have a second copy of it because I like this film so much and I know it's super rare. So I bought a second copy just in case anything ever happens to my first one. I keep meaning to get it converted into DVD. And that movie is Kindred, 1987, starring Amanda Pays, David Allen Brooks of Crusade and fame, I suppose. Fame? Yeah, fame. Well, that's the only other thing I really knew him from. And of course, and Rod Steiger. It's basically a bonkers film, which came off the back end of sort of like the growing trend of sci-fi horror movies in the 80s. Films like Alien and stuff like that had inspired this film, although very, very superficially, as we will discuss. Before we get started, please like, share, subscribe, comment down below, and let's get talking about Kindred. Now, as I said, to me personally, this is quite an important film because it's one of the oldest films I ever own, and it was sort of for a long time a standard of how I held a horror movie to be. I used to watch it with all the lights turned off in my bedroom. I used to have a bunk bed, so I'd be up near the ceiling of the room, sort of peeping over the edge of my bunk bed, watching this thing down on the TV, which was set on a set of drawers in my bedroom, and it'd just be sat there just playing away. I'd usually fall asleep watching it, to be honest, because I was a kid, but it was so it's not violent, but it's brutal. The film has some very creative deaths and is sometimes a little jarring to watch. Amanda Pays' death scene, spoilers for 1987's Kindred coming all the way through this video, so alert there. Anyway, her death scene where she basically drowns in the air is very drawn out and pretty visceral and weird. It's a literal fish out of water scene. And Amanda Pays, by the way, a beautiful woman. She's more recently been in things like Arrow. Not Arrow. Was she in Arrow? No. Flash, sorry. CW. She's been in that as a scientist. She was also in the short-lived Flash TV series in the early 90s, which was basically an homage in the Flash TV series because of the character she'd previously played, and of course the man that played Barry Allen's dad had played Barry Allen in the 90s Flash series, and she played the Doctor helping him, blah blah blah. Not really relevant to this video, but it does have characters like that. And again, David Allen Brooks, he was in Crusade, a series that it hit the ground running too hard, I think, and it was a bit overly ambitious. The sort of series format of that time period when it was released had changed a little bit, and something like B5 that it was spinning off from wasn't really what it was going to be able to stay doing. But anyway, he's known for doing that, and played the rather arrogant Maximilian in that, who was a member of IPX, Interplanetary Expeditions. Rod Steiger needs no introduction, fantastic actor. And then there's the director, Stephen Carpenter. He is known for a series of B movies in the 80s, but he is also known for being the creator and director of many episodes of Grimm, which if you've never watched, I really would highly recommend that show. And it's not, they don't make it anymore, but basically it's based on many of the Grimm fairy tales. Like, all the monsters are real and they're all different species hiding in plain sight, and only a Grimm can see them because they can kind of morph, they shapeshift, and when they can have a human see them if they want to, or otherwise they'll just change so only each other can see them, but a Grimm can see them no matter what, as long as if they do their They're vulgar. Vulgar? Vulgar. Yeah. German. I don't speak German. I've mispronounced that. I know I have. And they do that, and then he can see them, but they can see him as well. And looking into his eyes is like a deep pit of darkness, sort of the seething hell of nothing. A lot of the same sort of themes as Kindred, I should point out. The basic premise of the movie is we start out with basically some shit happens, and he ends up inheriting this house. And in the house there are ancient documents and records that belonged to his mother, who was a scientist. And she's left all these recordings, and some of it there's roaring and screaming, all kinds of stuff going on the recordings. But on others, there's her singing. And it turns out, basically, she was a geneticist, and she had been performing illegal and immoral genetic experiments. And the crazy mad science results of these were several creatures of different forms. And Rod Steiger plays a scientist who was working with her and now wants her research because she was way ahead of him. He's nowhere near in the same league. She was so much better. But he wants it for nefarious reasons. At least she had a conscience. She wanted it to was doing what she did. I don't know, to better mankind or something. I don't know. It was a little vague. But he wants it probably for his own ego, his own building of his career. And he also wants it to probably sell as something he can weaponize. And the genetic experiments obviously run amok, and people start to die. And all this is happening, and he begins to wonder what exactly was she experimenting on, because where is this thing? And eventually he realizes where the fucker is. And it basically turns out that Amanda Pays' character was a spy working for Rod Steiger, trying to get close to him, trying to seduce him so that she could either steal the notes or get him to hand the notes over and all the recordings and data, and he wanted to know where it is. And it is this massive, monstrous creature, which is the Kindred. And there's a reason it's called the Kindred, and I'm going to go full spoilers here because this is a 1987 movie. So if you really don't want to know how it ends, skip forward a little bit. Basically, he finds out that using his DNA, she has created a hybrid monster. It's this sort of humanoid-ish aberration, abomination of nature, which is vicious and starts just lashing out. And eventually he manages to kill it. He finds out that his mother's singing was what used to soothe it, but as all of its flesh melts off and sort of dissolves away, it begins to reveal the anatomical human that was actually living, almost a man's body inside of this monster. When the monster flesh melts off or tears away from it, he's left there screaming and dying, and he can't live because obviously he's part of it. And that's basically what it is. And the film is... It doesn't have any more story than that, really. There's a couple of little subplots, but generally speaking, it's that level. It is, though, well acted. The actors approach the material very seriously, and there's a high quality of the acting in it. The things that let the film down, I'll start with its strengths, actually. Things that it does right. It does its story good. The characters are just complicated enough and just intricate enough and have just enough development to be interesting. There's enough material for the actors to work with to become, three-dimensional. The only exception probably being Rod Steiger's character, because he is kind of not overly fleshed out. He's a bit of a one-dimensional villain with no redeeming qualities. As a result, he's a little bland. But Rod Steiger works well with the material he's got. Amanda Pays does very well. And I said David Alan Brooks, he does very well. And it generally does those things well. But the things it lets itself down. Clearly, the film did not have a big budget. So, although actually I think they go with a less is more approach for the most part, but when they do have a monster scene to do, they go all in on it. The creature effects are pretty damn good in this film. And that's pretty much where it ends for good. The bad steps in for the lighting in this film, as whoever did it was not doing their job well. It is poorly lit. Some scenes are far too dark. It's the 1980s. It wasn't shot on, like modern HD. I think this thing was even shot on something like 35mm. It was not shot on the best quality tape. So as a result, the picture can be a little grainy at times. Now, at first, I used to attribute that to it being just my video. I never really thought much of it, even when technology moved forwards. But the more recently, it really is. The film just isn't of a very high quality in terms of the way it was filmed. And those are the things that let it down. It is well paced. It's well written. It's just the technology, I think, wasn't utilized properly. And the 80s could easily light and film a film to a very high standard. They just didn't here, probably because they couldn't afford to, either through time or budget. Now, a film this obscure, most of the trivia and facts I can find about it aren't reliable. It's things like IMDb, Wikipedia. I'm not going to trust the information on them. So we're going to end this one with just my appreciation of this film. It has its flaws, but it has its strengths. Now, again, for me, it's a big nostalgia movie, but it's also vicious, brutal, very gory, and quite visceral, but it's not like blood and guts gore. It's usually monster gore, and it's unsettling. The way they tend to kill people is unsettling, rather than it being graphic. It's not like people's chests being splayed open and their guts you watch their guts spill out onto their floor while they watch. It's not that kind of visceral. It is just unsettling. It's also meant to be, because the Kindred is meant to be like a dark reflection of the main hero character. And it's literally his brother, ultimately. And it's meant to be the shock of it rather than any amount of blood. And it does these things very well. So I will score it in my very detailed and obviously very well thought out scoring system that can vary from day to day, because some days I'll probably score this film as, yeah, I love this film, it's highest on my list. Realistically, I'm probably going to give it a 4 out of 6, mostly because it is well acted. The actors do good with what they have. It's well paced. It's well shot for the most part. The problems that let it down are its budget, which probably wasn't its own fault. The lighting is appalling. I mean, it's really bad. And generally, some of the cinematography isn't great, and the quality of the film they use to make it isn't good. But special effects, they're pretty good. So 4 out of 6 for this. I do recommend it. I think you can find it on eBay, but I'm pretty certain it does not exist on any streaming platform. And if you can find it on DVD, email me, because or message me on Twitter or something from one of my socials down there, would actually be easier, because I want this damn thing and I can't find it. I can only find VHS. But all the same, great film, highly recommend. With all that said, if you made it all this into this video, thank you for watching. Please like, share, subscribe, comment down below, and bye bye.